What is up, everyone? We are on day 33 of our Bible in a Year series. We are going through, starting Genesis, working all the way through to Revelation in a year. We're reading out of the CSB, Christian Standard Bible. I have a link for one, specifically the Christian Standard Bible Apologetic Study Bible, in the description if that's of interest to you. I do have a video as well down there where I review that Bible and give some reasons why I think why I evaluate it as highly as I do. It is especially if you're curious about studying the Bible, about apologetics, things like that, it is hands down that's what you need to go with. So yes, we are on Leviticus 4 today, and we will jump straight in. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, when someone sins unintentionally against any of the Lord's commands and does anything prohibited by them, if the anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people, he is to present to the Lord a young unblemished bull as a sin offering. For the sin he has committed, he is to bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, lay his hands on the bull's head, and slaughter it before the Lord. The anointed priest will then take some of the bull's blood and bring it into the tent of meeting. The priest is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest is to apply some of the blood to the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. He must pour out the rest of the bull's blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering, that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to remove all the fat from the bull of the sin offering, the fat surrounding the entrails, all the fat that is on the entrails, and the 2 kidneys with the fat on them at the loins. He will also remove the fatty lobe of the liver with the kidneys, just as the fat is removed from the ox of the fellowship sacrifice. The priest is to burn them on the altar of burnt offering, but the hide of the bull and all its flesh, with its head and legs and its entrails and waist, all of the rest of the bull, he must bring to a ceremonially clean place outside the camp, the ash heap, and must burn it on the wood fire. It is to be burned at the ash heap. Now if the whole community of Israel errs, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, so that they violate any of the Lord's commands and incur guilt by doing what is prohibited, then the assembly must present a young bull as a sin offering. They are to bring it before the tent of meeting when the sin they have committed in regard to the command becomes known." So something I think is noteworthy here is if there is sin and it is not known that it is sin, that doesn't excuse the sacrifice that needs to be made. Sacrifice still has to be made. Now for us, I would say I used to, and this is kind of just how I was raised, not really my parents, more just the church setting that I grew up in, was very, very, I would say legalistic. But I had an idea that if I had sinned, if I did something that was sin, and I did not know it was sin, and I didn't ask for forgiveness, I would go to hell. And so I was like paranoid all the time that I was going to do something wrong and not realize that it was wrong. But I think that kind of goes against the nature of God. I do think that it's good to get into a practice of asking God to search you. You know, we see David do this. He asked God to create in him a clean heart, and I think it's good to ask God to reveal anything that is in your life that you need to take care of, whether it is full on sin or whether it's just like an unwise behavior or unwise thing. I think it's a good practice to get into. Okay. 15. The elders of the community are to lay their hands on the bull's head before the Lord, and it is to be slaughtered before the Lord. The anointed priest will bring some of the bull's blood into the tent of meeting. The priest is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain. He is to apply some of the blood to the horns of the altar that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to remove all the fat from it and burn it on the altar. He is to offer this bull just as he did with the bull in the sin offering. He will offer it the same way, so the priest will make atonement on their behalf, and they will be forgiven. Then he will bring the bull outside the camp and burn it just as he had burned the first bull. It is the sin offering for the assembly. When a leader sins unintentionally, violates any of the commands of the Lord, his God, by doing what is prohibited and incurs guilt, or someone informs him about the sin he has committed, he is to bring an unblemished male goat as his offering. He is to lay his hand on the head of the goat and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a sin offering. Then the priest is to take some of the blood from the sin offering with his finger and apply it to the horns of the altar of burnt offering. The rest of its blood he is to pour at the base of the altar of burnt offering. He must burn all of its fat on the altar, like the fat of the fellowship sacrifice. In this way the priest will make atonement on his behalf for that person's sin, and he will be forgiven. Now, if any of the common people sins unintentionally by violating one of the Lord's commands, does what is prohibited and incurs guilt, or if someone informs him about the sin he has committed, then he is to bring an unblemished female goat as his offering for the sin that he has committed. He is to lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at a place of the burnt offering. Then the priest is to take some of its blood with its finger and apply it to the horns of the altar of burnt offering. He is to pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He is to remove all its fat, just as the fat is removed from the fellowship sacrifice. The priest is to burn it on the altar as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. In this way, the priest will make atonement on his behalf, and he will be forgiven. Or if the offering that he brings as a sin offering is a lamb, he is to bring an unblemished female. He is to lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it as a sin offering at the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. Then the priest is to take some of the blood of the sin offering and with his finger and apply it to the horns of the altar at the base of the altar. He is to remove all its fat, just as the fat of the lamb is removed from the fellowship sacrifice. The priest will burn it on the altar along with the food offering to the Lord. In this way the priest will make atonement on his behalf for the sin he has committed, and he will be forgiven. Chapter 5. So this is a little bit of a random thought. I'm just picturing in my head, someone sins and then they have to take this bull or goat or whatever it is up to the tabernacle in order for it to be sacrificed. That process, everyone is going to see them bringing that to the tabernacle, right? So even if it is a secret sin, even if it is a secret sin, if it's something that nobody knows about, they're still going to, it's going to be obvious something's going on. I think there's an element of shame, I guess, in that. And I think that is a good thing, and I think that's something that we should actually get back to in some of the countries in the West. Now, I'm not saying don't forgive people. I'm not saying anything like that. But I am saying it needs to be incredibly socially unacceptable for sin. We see in 2 Corinthians, Paul is talking about the people at the Church of Corinth are tolerating sin. It's a man who is says he is sleeping with his father's wife. So best case scenario, his stepmom. Worst case scenario, it's worse. But the fellowship there is tolerating it. It's allowing him to be there in their midst, not calling for correction, anything like that. And Paul says that you are to throw them out from your membership. Turn them over to Satan. But the purpose is so that they will eventually be redeemed and come back. But the idea is, like, there needs to be something. If they are living in some type of sin and it is public and they are unrepentant, there needs to be some type of ostracization. I can't say the word. There needs to be some type of shame, some type of publicly being able to see there's a separation between us. I think that's a good thing, and that is something that can bring people back to repentance. So, okay, chapter 5. When someone sins in any of these ways, if he has seen, heard, or known about something he has witnessed and did not respond to a public call to testify, he will bear his iniquity. Or if someone touches anything unclean, a carcass of an unclean wild animal, or unclean livestock, or an unclean swarming creature, without being aware of it, he is unclean and incurs guilt. Or if he touches human uncleanness, and any uncleanness by which one can become defiled, without being aware of it, but later recognizes it, he incurs guilt. So I notice here there is a stipulation with this. There does seem to be this theme. So we see, what did I just read? 3. Okay, if he touches human uncleanness without being aware of it, but later recognizes it, he incurs guilt. And then verse 4 here, or if someone swears rashly to do what is good or evil concerning anything, a person may speak rashly in an oath without being aware of it, but later recognizes it, he incurs guilt in such an instance. So this kind of goes back to the idea I was saying, like, you're not going to be, the guilt is there because you know you did something wrong. If you have no knowledge, like genuinely have no knowledge, not just a saying, oh, I didn't know, and you knew full well. But if you genuinely didn't know, it doesn't excuse the sin, but you're not going to be held to a standard that you didn't know was there, if that makes sense. Okay, if someone incurs guilt on one of these cases, he is to confess he has committed that sin. He must bring his penalty for guilt. For the sin he has committed to the Lord, a female lamb or goat from the flock as a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement on his behalf for his sin. But if he cannot afford an animal from the flock, then he may bring to the Lord 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. This is going back to what we talked, I think it was yesterday, we talked about the idea that it makes it available for anybody. So being poor is not an excuse to not make atonement. As penalty for guilt for his sin, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, he is to bring them to the priest, who will first present the one for the sin offering. He is to twist its head at the back of the neck without severing it. Then he will sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, while the rest of the blood is to be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. He will prepare the second bird as a burnt offering according to the regulation. In this way, the priest will make atonement on his behalf for the sin that he has committed, and he will be forgiven. But if he cannot afford 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, he may bring 2 quarts of fine flour as an offering for his sin. So again, if he's unable to afford that, there's another option. He is to bring it to the priest, who will take a handful from it as a memorial portion and burn it on the altar along with the food offering to the Lord. It is a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement on his behalf concerning the sin he has committed. In any of these cases, he will be forgiven. The rest will belong to the priest like the grain offering. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, if someone offends by sinning unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things, he must bring his penalty for guilt to the Lord, an unblemished ram from the flock, based on your assessment of its value in silver shekels according to the sanctuary shekel. As a guilt offering, he is to make restitution for his sin regarding any holy thing, adding a fifth of its value to it, and give it to the priest. Then the priest will make atonement on his behalf with the ram of the guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. If someone sins and without knowing it violates any of the Lord's commands concerning anything prohibited, he is guilty and he will bear his iniquity. He must bring an unblemished ram from the flock according to your assessment of its value as a guilt offering to the priest. Then the priest will make atonement on his behalf for the error he has committed unintentionally, and he will be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He is indeed guilty before the Lord. Chapter 6. The Lord spoke to Moses, when someone sins and offends the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in regard to a deposit, a security, or a robbery, or defrauds his neighbor, or finds something lost and lies about it, or swears falsely about any of the sinful things that person may do. Once he has sinned and acknowledged his guilt, he must return what he stole or defrauded, or the deposit entrusted to him, or the lost item he found, or anything else about which he swore falsely. He will make full restitution for it and add a fifth to its value to it. He is to pay to its owner on the day he acknowledges his guilt. This I think is interesting too. So if you steal something, it's not just you're giving that item back. You're giving that item back plus a fifth of the total value. So it's not, it costs you something to steal. It's not just if you get caught you give the item back. Like there's a cost to you just for doing the action, which I think is good. Verse 6. Then he is to bring his guilt offering to the Lord, and he still has to do the guilt offering too. An unblemished ram from the flock according to your assessment of its value as a guilt offering to the priest. In this way the priest will make atonement on his behalf before the Lord, and he will be forgiven for anything he may have done to incur guilt. So with this, he has to give back what he stole plus a fifth of the value. So he is making a restitution of some kind to the owner of the item that he stole. Then he still has to go back and give the sacrifice, the sin offering to God. So it's costly to do this, but that's like the whole purpose here. Sin is costly. Sin, there is a price that has to be paid for sin, and that price is death. So I think this is something too, maybe helped steer people clear a little bit, is when they go through and do this, they are seeing 100% the connection between their sin, what they did that was wrong, and this animal that's died. So it is a one-for-one correlation. Like they are seeing a direct connection. This is the consequences of what I did. That I would imagine would be kind of powerful. Okay. Verse 8. The Lord spoke to Moses, Command Aaron and his sons, this is the law of the burnt offering. The burnt offering itself must remain on the altar's heart all night until morning, while the fire of the altar is kept burning on it. The priest is to put on his linen robe and linen undergarments. He is to remove the ashes of the burnt offering the fire has consumed on the altar and place them beside the altar. Then he will take off his garments, put on other clothes, and bring the ashes outside the camp to a ceremonially clean place. The fire on the altar is to be kept burning. It must not go out. Every morning the priest will burn wood on the fire. He is to arrange the burnt offering on the fire and burn the fat portions from the fellowship offerings on it. Fire must be kept burning on the altar continually and must not go out. Now this is the law of the grain offering. Aaron's sons will present it before the Lord in front of the altar. The priest is to remove a handful of fine flour and olive oil from the grain offering with all the frankincense that is on the offering and burn its memorial portion on the altar as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Aaron and his sons may eat the rest of it. It is to be eaten in the form of unleavened bread in a holy place. They are to eat it in the courtyard. They are to eat it in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It must not be baked with yeast. I have assigned it as their portion from my food offering. It is especially holy, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. Any male among Aaron's descendants may eat it. It is a permanent portion throughout your generations. From the food offerings to the Lord, anything that touches the offerings will become holy. Another little side note. Notice the ones that are set apart, Aaron and his sons, they are provided for by God. And the provision comes from what is God's, what's being paid to God, or the offering that's being given to God. And so I might just be, maybe this is me reading too much into it, but I see this idea that these people are set apart. They're doing what God has called them to do, and He is making sure they are provided for. Now, it's a faith thing. They don't grow food. They don't go harvest their own food. They don't have their own animals, something like that. They are fully dependent on God. But they're not hurting. They're not lacking. Just random little piece stuck out to me. Where was I? Okay, 19. The Lord spoke to Moses, "This is the offering that Aaron and his sons are to present to the Lord on the day that he is anointed. 2 quarts of fine flour as a regular grain offering, half of it in the morning and half in the evening. It is to be prepared with oil on the griddle. You are to bring it well kneaded. You are to present it as a grain offering of baked pieces, a pleasant aroma to the Lord. The priest, who is one of Aaron's sons, will be anointed to take his place, is to prepare it. It must be completely burned as a permanent portion for the Lord. Every grain offering for a priest will be a whole burnt offering. It is not to be eaten." The Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is the law of the sin offering. The sin offering is most holy and must be slaughtered before the Lord at the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest who offers it as a sin offering will eat it. It is to be eaten in a holy place in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Anything that touches its flesh will become holy, and if any of its blood splatters on the garment, then you must wash the garment in a holy place. A clay pot in which the sin offering is boiled is to be broken. If it is boiled in a bronze vessel, it is to be scored, and rinsed with water. Any male among the priests may eat it. It is especially holy, but no sin offering may be eaten if its blood has been brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place. It must be burned." Okay, that is it for today as far as the reading goes. It's getting good. Leviticus is a good one, and there's, like I said, there's so much to it. I'm not even able to get to it. Like, I'm already coming up on longer than I want to be on this video, just for stopping a couple times. So I'd highly encourage you, Find someone that teaches through this, or there's an app called Through the Word where you can listen to, and it goes chapter by chapter, and it kind of breaks it down as well. It's a really, really good app. I really enjoy. So let's dive into the questions for today. Question 1. What do the different types of offerings in these chapters reveal about God's desire for reconciliation and the seriousness of sin? I think I touched on that already. I think there is a direct connection that people see that my sin is causing this death. They're able to directly see what they did has this effect. And I think it does help put the seriousness of sin in a much better or much more accurate light. Question 2. How can we apply the principles of confession and accountability found in these laws to our own lives and relationships? I kind of touched on that one already too. I think the idea of making it not tolerating sin, making it a social taboo to live in sin, to engage in something like that. I think that's one step. Offering forgiveness and reconciliation, helping people, coming alongside people and helping them, I think is another step. But really, a lot of it comes back to really trying to show the seriousness of sin. Yeah. Number 3, in what ways do these teachings on atonement help us understand the significance of Jesus' sacrifice and the concept of grace in the New Testament? It's not a perfect picture, but it is a picture of what Jesus did for us. The big difference is Jesus went willingly as a man, fully God, fully man. He went willingly and took on the sin that he did not have. He had not sinned, but he took on the sin of the world, and he willingly paid that price for us. So there is a picture of that here. Now with Jesus, it's a one-time thing. One time and it's done and it's paid for. I think, again, a lot of this, I think just the seriousness of sin shows through, and you can see that with Jesus going to the cross. Like I talked about before, I think it can be very, very beneficial to think about when you do sin. Think about that being the thing that sent Jesus to the cross. Make it heavy. Like, make yourself realize the actual weight of what you have done, of what your actions are. I think that is a good way to really start getting into proper understanding and a proper understanding of what sin is. But that is it for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. I enjoy hearing from people. I enjoy interacting with people, so that is always a good time. If this has been a blessing to you, word of mouth is the best way the podcast spreads, so you spread this to somebody else. If this has been a blessing to you, you think it's going to bless somebody else, you have somebody in mind, pass it on to them. They can start the day that they just jump in. They can start at day 1 and just go one day at a time. They can start at day 1 and crib in to go forward faster, whichever they want to do. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but yeah, they can jump in there. Appreciate everybody watching, listening, and everything that's coming out of these. I really do hope. There's been a couple comments I've gotten from people, and I really do hope that this is a blessing for you guys. So appreciate it. God bless.